السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Quran Weekly where we read it in Arabic and discuss it in English. My name is Ahmed
My name is Safa.
and we're happy to take you on another episode reading through the Quran. Before we begin, we would like to add a little bit of a disclaimer we should start saying from every episode from now on, but primarily to explain where we're coming from. Essentially, this platform that we're using to share the Quran is our introduction to the Quran, our journey into it. We are reading it for the first time with a very keen eye. We would like to explain that we are not linguistic scholars. We're not professional in Arabic, and we're not Quran scholars as well. So we are coming this from the perspective of the layman, from the perspective of the average individual. And we are not claiming that we are explaining this for you. We are just explaining it as we understand it best. And it's up to you to see what you take from it, what you learn from it, and what you reach. I'm also recognizing that
Exactly.
the Quran is not showing up. I don't know why. I think we are going to have to fix it. There we go. That was a bit weird. Technical difficulties. As you can see, we're also not professional streamers, so we're really coming at this from an amateur perspective, and we're hoping that you learn with us. We encourage discussion. If you see something that you don't necessarily relate to or agree with or have a different perspective, by all means, jump into the comment section. We're looking for conversation. We're looking for engagement.
And we encourage you to read it yourself as well.
Yeah.
So what I learned from reading the Quran is that it's a very personal understanding. So I think everyone should read it and try to understand it themselves. They will have a unique perspective for sure.
Yeah. And something you were saying just before we started is that the more we read it, the more we realize how difficult it is to be man-made because it's so complex, it's so rich, it's so profound. It's
There are so many possible explanations to everything, every word even. So yeah.
So thank you for joining us. We'll jump straight in, and as usual, before we begin, we always start with أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم, which means I seek refuge from God, from the devil, from Satan, and in the name of God, the most merciful, and whose mercy is most encompassing. And off we go.
فما لكم في المنافقين فئتين والله أركسهم بما كسبوا أتريدون أن تهدوا من أضل الله ومن يضلل الله فلن تجد له سبيلا.
Okay, we're back to the topic of munafiqun, but let's see what it means. And so what and if what is for you concerning the hypocrites, the ones that say that they believe but they don't, the ones that say that they're a part of the religious followers but they're not. But they have two parties. Why are you believers divided into two groups? While God has cast them back for what they have earned. Why are you believers divided into two groups regarding the hypocrites? I think that's a good way. Do you wish to guide whoever God has led astray? And whoever is led astray by God, then they will never find for him a way.
Yeah, so there are differences in what the interpretations say about the reason for why this verse came to the Prophet. But one of the explanations is that it was about about the believers who didn't want to go to Uhud, who left the Prophet when he called for the Battle of Uhud. So there were two groups. Some of them said that they need to be punished, and some of them said, no, we shouldn't do anything about it. Some of them said they are believers, but they just didn't want to go. And some of them said, no, they are hypocrites, or they are disbelievers, kafirin. And some of them said that they can be brought back to the faith, and some of them said no, they cannot, and they are on the other side, on the wrong side. So this is what it means. There is no, and again, it goes back to what we said at the beginning, that there are there are different explanations, and there are different possible interpretations for the verses.
The way I understand this is that from the believers, there's two groups of how to deal with those hypocrites. One of them is to try and convince them, and one of them is to let them go. And from what I'm seeing from this verse, it's saying, do you wish to guide the ones who have been led astray by God? And whoever has been led astray by God, then you will never find for them a way.
Yeah.
Which translates to me saying, yeah, don't try to help the people that don't believe. This kind of ties back to the thing that we said in chapter 2, which is that there's no compulsion in religion. And you can't force someone to believe or not believe. And here, I think this is kind of echoing the statement that if God has said that they're not going to believe, they're probably not going to believe. So, from what I understand, the group is don't try to convince them and don't try to push them towards the way of God, because they're destined to be led astray, so to speak.
The second part says that if God misguided them, or like they were Allah let them go in that direction, then you will not be able to bring them back.
Yeah.
The first part is about the two groups between the believers. So the two groups, it's not very clear, and there are different explanations. Like I said, it can be one of them that some of them said they are still believers, and the other group said no, they are hypocrites, or they are disbelievers and they are fooling us, or that they should be punished, or no, we should just let them go. It can be different things.
Yeah. Cool.
ودوا لو تكفرون كما كفروا فتكونون سواء فلا تتخذوا منهم أولياء حتى يهاجروا في سبيل الله فإن تولوا فخذوهم واقتلوهم حيث وجدتموهم ولا تتخذوا منهم وليا ولا نصيرا.
Okay, I see this is what you were talking about, the difficulty of these verses. They wish as if you disbelieved as they disbelieved, so they want for you to disbelieve the same way they do, then you would be alike. So do not take from among them allies or guardians until they immigrate in the way of God. Or here it's kind of like, to go in the way of God, but it could be a bit more profound and literal. But essentially until they work in the way of God. But if they turn back from the way of God, then seize them and kill them wherever you find them, and do not take from them any ally or any helper. Yeah, heavy verses.
Yeah, and here it still talks about the hypocrites. So it says that these hypocrites, they wish that you disbelieve like they disbelieve. And here it doesn't call them hypocrites. If you noticed, it calls them kafirun, like complete disbelievers. And they wish that you disbelieve like they disbelieve. So that you are alike.
On the same level.
And then it says, don't take them as your awliya, like your supporters, or the people who would make you, your allies, until they immigrate in the way of Allah. And immigrate in the way of Allah, of course, has also possible interpretations. But if you take it in the literal meaning, is that you immigrate. And it can be the immigration from people with the Prophet from Mecca to Medina at some point. So don't take them as allies until they prove their faith by immigrating with you from Mecca. And if they turn back, if they do not want to immigrate with you in the way of Allah, which can mean different things, so seize them and kill them where you find them, and don't take from them allies or helpers. And here it's talking about hypocrites, or people that you can see as like agents working for the enemy, and it becomes more clear in the next verses. But yeah, so here it says, and in these verses it's talking a lot about wars and battles and how to deal with your enemies. You will see it in the next verses. So yeah, it's very specific, and I think it can be very specific to that time in the situation. at the time when these verses were brought down to the Prophet.
Yeah. But still some heavy, as a person coming from it from a modern perspective, killing is always a very heavy topic. So it's trying to understand why, if they turn back, what does it mean? And I think you said it'll make more sense as we go along.
Here what it says, that they have to prove their faith by immigrating with you, and of course it's important to also consider the context. So the context is that the Muslims and the believers were under attack and were in war with the disbelievers. And then there were some people who were showing that they are believers to the believers, but actually working with or working against them. So it's like a war context. But we can continue, and it will become
a bit more clear.
Yeah.
Let me just make sure that this is fine.
إلا الذين يصلون إلى قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق أو جاءوكم حصرت صدورهم أن يقاتلوكم أو يقاتلوا قومهم ولو شاء الله لسلطهم عليكم فلقاتلوكم فإن اعتزلوكم فلم يقاتلوكم وألقوا إليكم السلم فما جعل الله لكم عليهم سبيلا.
Yeah, so following the context of, killing, there's almost like a mercy and an explanation on that.
These are the exceptions. So it says, except for
those who join you to a group between you and between them a treaty, and unless those who are allies of the people and the people you're bound with in treaty, or who come to you restraining their hearts, that they fight you.
So they don't want to fight you, or those who come to you and they don't want to fight you, and they don't want to fight their people. So the exceptions for it said in the first verse that those who do not immigrate with you and do not prove that they are believers, you should take them like as captives or to kill them, except for those who are from among a tribe, because I think Qom is like a tribe, unless they are from a tribe that you are connected to with a bond.
Yeah.
Or those who come to you and their hearts are like restricted, or like their hearts are with heavy hearts, that they do not want to fight you, and they don't want to fight their own people. So they are in a difficult situation, but they're not going to fight you and they're not going to fight their people, then just let them go, I think. But we can continue reading.
And if God had willed, he would have given them power over you, and surely they would have fought in you. So if they withdraw from you, then do not and do not fight you
against you,
then offer for you peace. So if they don't fight you and they offer for you peace, then God has not made for you against them a way. So here we're also getting a lot of context into who you should fight, and it's not you should just fight people who don't go in the way that you go. People who are peaceful towards you, people who aren't fighting you, people who are caught in between the tribes, then as long as they're not fighting you, as long as they're not addressing you, then you're not permitted to harm them. So it's being very specific.
Yes.
So the context that we understand is that it's not just the munafiqeen, but it's also the munafiqeen, the people that are not just turning away from you, but the ones that are fighting you in your cause, which is given a bit more context. So it's given the context of war. It's given the context of only fight when you're being fought.
Yes, exactly. So here it clearly says that if they do not fight you and if they surrender or they give you peace, then you should not approach them. You should not fight them.
Yeah.
ستجدون آخرين يريدون أن يأمنوكم ويأمنوا قومهم كلما ردوا إلى الفتنة أركسوا فيها فإن لم يعتزلوكم ويلقوا إليكم السلم ويكفوا أيديهم فخذوهم واقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم وأولئكم جعلنا لكم عليهم سلطانا مبينا.
Okay, the exception was, this is kind of echoing the sentiment of both.
The beginning you will find other people, so it's talking about another group of people.
You'll find others who wish to be secure from you, and they be secure from their people. Every time that they are returned to the temptation, they are plunged into it. They're plunged into temptation. So if not, they withdraw from you, and if they don't withdraw from you and they offer for you peace. And they restrain their hands. If they don't withdraw from you and offer you peace and restrain their hands, then seize them and fight them wherever you find them. Those have been made for you against them an authority that is clear. So if they don't keep away, offer you peace, or refrain from attacking you, that's when the conditions activate for saying, then seize them, capture them, kill them wherever you find them. And those we have made for you an authority that is clear.
Yeah, and at the beginning of the verse, it talks about specifically the people who want to be safe from the believers, and at the same time they want to be safe from their own people. So whenever they are with the believers, it's understood that whenever they are with the believers, they believe, and whenever they go back to the temptation, which is to their people, then they go back to their ways.
Yeah.
So for these people, if they do not stop fighting you and stay away from you and give you the full peace, then in that case you are allowed to kill them.
Yeah.
If they don't give you peace. So again, it's I think overall in the verses, you are not allowed to kill people who are peaceful. You are not allowed to kill people who are not fighting you.
Yeah.
So if someone gives you peace, it's in this verse and in the previous verse. If they give you peace, then you are not allowed to approach them. If they are peaceful towards you, then you should also be peaceful towards them.
So very specific conditions. It's not just saying kill the people who don't believe. It's saying only kill the ones that are not peaceful and not common. Which,
وما كان لمؤمن أن يقتل مؤمنا إلا خطأ ومن قتل مؤمنا خطأ فتحرير رقبة مؤمنة ودية مسلمة إلى أهله إلا أن يصدقوا فإن كان من قوم عدو لكم وهو مؤمن فتحرير رقبة مؤمنة وإن كان من قوم بينكم وبينهم ميثاق فدية مسلمة إلى أهله وتحرير رقبة مؤمنة فمن لم يجد فصيام شهرين متتابعين توبة من الله وكان الله عليما حكيما.
Okay, long verse and some interesting clauses within it. And it was not for the believer that they kill another believer, except by mistake.
So it's not allowed.
It's not permitted for a believer to kill a believer unless it's by mistake. And whoever kills a believer by mistake, then freeing the slave of a believing...
freeing, like, because they had slaves and they had like... I think the right word is slaves. Yeah. So if a believer kills a believer by mistake, then in retribution you should free a slave and give money.
money as
It's
a
called
compensation.
deya. Deya is like when you, yeah, it's like in compensation. It's the same as compensation today, I think.
Yeah,
So a compensation to be paid to his family.
to his family.
Unless they give it away, unless they remit it as charity, they say, we don't want the deya, we don't want the money.
Yeah,
And then, but if he was from a people who are hostile towards you and he's a believer, so the person that was killed by mistake was a believer, but he was fighting with the enemy.
yeah,
So the retribution for this is freeing a slave. Here it doesn't mention the money. Here it just says that the retribution is freeing a slave, a believing slave. And then, and if he was from a people who between you and them a bond, and it doesn't mention if he's believer or not. It just the people. If you get someone from a people that you have a bond between them, and I think specifically these verses are very complicated because I think that it's talking about like how to conduct wars and how it happens between different people. Here it talks about, I think, more of tribes, but we can also understand it as different countries. In my opinion, I don't know.
yeah,
So if he was from people who you have a bond and you have a bond, a treaty between you, then the retribution is also to give money to be paid to his family, and also to free a slave. And who doesn't find a slave to free, then he should fast 2 full months,
2 consecutive months.
as repentance from Allah, and Allah is all knowing and all wise.
I find this interesting, and also they use the term believer. I know that we've had the discussion before about believers being Muslims, but and somehow I would imagine this includes Christians and Jews, because then there are the concept of they're ones who believe in the one true God, but they're from a tribe that is not yours. I don't know if I'm adding context here, but it kind of talks about the wars between the religions as well. Because they're still believers, they still believe in God, but they're believing God for a hostile case. Because I can just imagine at the time of the Prophet, everyone who believed in what the Prophet was saying was in the same group.
Yes.
So I imagine this is talking about groups outside of Islam.
It is possible, and it is possible, I think, because it talks about 3 different cases. So the first case, if you kill another believer by mistake and it's understood that he's from within your group, and then the second case is you kill another believer from a different group. It can be that he's from a different religion, or it can be that he's just a believer in a different group, I don't know. And then the third one is that if you kill someone and there's a treaty or a bond between the two parties, and
you win.
Sorry.
And it doesn't mention if he's a believer or non-believer. So I think it covers three different cases.
From your own people, from the enemy, from a people you have a treaty with.
Yes.
And the only one that's from the enemy is that you release the freeing of a slave, but the ones of your own people and of the ones that you have a treaty with, you have to free a slave and pay the compensation.
Yes. Yeah.
Interesting.
ومن يقتل مؤمنا متعمدا فجزاؤه جهنم خالدا فيها وغضب الله عليه ولعنه وأعد له عذابا عظيما.
Okay. And whoever kills a believer intentionally, then his recompense is hell, abiding in it forever, abiding forever in it. And God's wrath will fall upon them and curse them, and he has prepared for him a punishment. That is great.
So here, a couple of things that I found interesting is that it doesn't mention a specific punishment for this person in this life. Here in this verse, it says, whoever kills a believer intentionally, then his punishment will be that he will go to hell, and the wrath from God, and be cursed by God, and he will have a tremendous punishment. It doesn't specifically mention, like in the previous verse, it talks about specific things that you should do in this world to make up for killing a believer or a person unintentionally. But here it doesn't mention a specific punishment in this world. But I think that when I went through what we read before in Surah Al-Baqarah, there was something saying that كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ الْقَصَاص, which means that retribution, you should do retribution. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقَصَاصِ حَيَاةً يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ, meaning that in having retribution in this world, there is life for you. So yeah, you can go to other verses that talks about like having an equal punishment for your action.
Yeah.
Another point that I find interesting is that here it says whoever kills a believer intentionally. It says a believer specifically. It doesn't mention. So what if he kills a non-believer intentionally? And then I also tried to find related verses. So, which makes it clear that you are not allowed to kill any person intentionally. So if we go to Surah Al-Isra, it says وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا النَّفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَّمَ اللَّهُ إِلَّا بِالْحَقِّ. So don't kill a self.
Unless God has permitted it.
God has not allowed this unless it's by right. I think unless it's by right means that there is a reason for it.
Which means like one of the verses here is talking about when you should fight and specifically when you shouldn't fight. So here it's giving examples of when you can kill someone, and everything outside of those examples is not permitted.
Yes. And again, another verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah 32, من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا. Meaning whoever kills a self, a soul, a person without another self, meaning that if it's not in retribution or it's not in something like that, or just to spread corruption in the earth, then it's as if he killed all of humanity. So whoever kills oneself without the right to do so, it's as if he killed all of humanity. And whoever makes it alive, I think, and whoever brings a self to life, it's as if he brought all humanity to life again. So it's like it's a very big thing. It's I think it's a very big act.
I mean, small side note here, but I have a friend who I met at a gay bar, who is a doctor and was on a flight and essentially saved the person's life on the flight. So it's kind of nice to hear this.
I think this is
exactly what it's like. So he saved a life, but then it kind of brings the age-old question of like, is a gay person saving a life? What is their life worth? And then does that make sense for you to deny them rights? And I just remembered it because I think it's like controversial, but it's kind of powerful. And it's kind of like for the people that save lives, they're really saving humanity.
I think this is a very good example for who can bring life.
No.
So it's as if he brought life to all of humanity, which is a very big thing as well. So I think that this has a very big reward, regardless. But you never know.
Yeah.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا ضربتم في سبيل الله فتبينوا ولا تقولوا لمن ألقى إليكم السلام لست مؤمنا تبتغون عرض الحياة الدنيا فعند الله مغانم كثيرة كذلك كنتم من قبل فمن الله عليكم فتبينوا إن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا.
Okay. O ye who believed, when you go forth in the way of God, then investigate and do not say, not what?
Just be sure. It means I
Be
think
certain.
Be certain, yes.
Yeah. And do not say to the one who offers for you peace that you are not a believer seeking transitory gains in the way of life. So do not say to those who offer you greeting with peace, you are no believer. Don't chastise the people that are offering you peace and telling them, no, you're not believers, so we don't want peace with you.
Yeah.
You're looking for the prize of the world. For with God is the bounties, maghanim, the booties, that are abundant, and like that, you were from before, then conferred.
Disbelievers.
You
were
before,
also
disbelievers
disbelievers.
from before, and then God conferred upon you. So be certain.
So God guided you to the correct way. I think in a way it means like don't think you're better. Don't think that you are better than the people that you're meeting, because you were once disbelievers.
Lost.
And it's just that God guided you.
Yeah.
So don't act like whenever you travel or you go around and you meet someone, you tell them you're not a believer. You don't know. It's like Don't do that.
Indeed, God is of what you do all aware. And yeah, I kind of like this concept of every believer was a non-believer at one point.
Yes.
And so who are you to judge the non-believers? Who are you to... and it comes with the concept of offering peace. If they offer you peace, don't mock them, fight them, disregard. Take the peace and understand that they're on their own journey, just like all of us. I like these verses.
لا يستوي القاعدون من المؤمنين غير أولي الضرر والمجاهدون في سبيل الله بأموالهم وأنفسهم فضل الله المجاهدين بأموالهم وأنفسهم على القاعدين درجة وكلا وعد الله الحسنى وفضل الله المجاهدين على القاعدين أجرا عظيما.
Okay, now here we see a separation in the believers. They are not equal, the ones who sit at home, from the believers, other than the ones who are disabled and the ones who strive in the way of God. So here it's separating the people who stay at home willingly versus the believers and the ones who are incapable of, the ones who are doing God's work and the ones who are incapable of doing God's work. With their wealth and their lives, they're kind of giving.
So you can fight with
money,
actual
fighting, or your money or yourselves.
Yes.
It's preferred for God the ones who strive with their wealth and their lives over the ones who sit at home by a certain degree. There's a difference in rank between them, not rank but degree. And to all, God has promised the best, preferred for the ones who strive over the ones who sit, a reward that is great.
Yeah, but there is an exception mentioned at the beginning of the verse, is that it says they are not equal, those who do not fight, except for those who have excuses.
Yeah.
Like the people who are sick or who have a physical disability. It's mentioned in one of the interpretations that a blind man came to the Prophet and told him, I would have fought if I could, but he is not obliged because he has an excuse not to do it.
He's disabled. So yeah, I mean, it's not saying that everybody that's sitting at home, but it's everybody that's capable of using their money or using themselves to further the way of God, but is choosing to sit at home.
Yeah.
So the ones that do get more reward.
Yeah, but at the end of the verse it says that for both groups, like those who do not fight and those who do fight, God has promised a reward. وَكِلًا وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الْحُسْنَى. Like
And to all,
at the end, God has promised the best to both
all.
groups, but it's like difference in degrees. Like, if you're fighting with yourself or with your money in the way of Allah, then this will give you a degree.
Yeah.
A higher degree.
You guys can't see it, but there's a cat right behind the laptop. He's found the warmth. Hi, Romeo. All right.
درجات منه ومغفرة ورحمة وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
Yeah, so here it's kind of also talking about the differences. There are different ranks or different degrees from him, and forgiveness and mercy, and God, and is God oft forgiving and most merciful.
إن الذين توفاهم الملائكة ظالمي أنفسهم قالوا فيم كنتم قالوا كنا مستضعفين في الأرض قالوا ألم تكن أرض الله واسعة فتهاجروا فيها فأولئك مأواهم جهنم وساءت مصيرا.
Okay. Indeed, the ones who take them in death, who the angels take in death, because they claim your soul, who while they were wrongly or wronging themselves, while they were hurting themselves, they say, in what condition were you? So the ones who wronged themselves said, we were oppressed in the earth. So the angels reply, is it not possible for you, was it not
Wasn't the earth large enough?
The earth of God large enough so that you could immigrate in it? Then those who, so like wasn't the earth large enough for you to immigrate? Then those who, and the condition, those are the ones whose abode will be in hell, and it is an evil destination.
Yeah. So the first thing here in the verse is that it says, those who are, those who the angels take their lives. And it's mentioned in another verse in Surah Al-Sajda, قُلْ يَتَوَفَّاكُمْ مَلَكَ الْمَوْتِ الَّذِي وُكِّلَ بِكُمْ, meaning that the angel of death takes your soul, or takes your kills you. يَتَوَفَّاكُم, I think it kills you.
Yeah, well, seizes your soul and takes it to heaven or hell.
So here it mentions the same, that there is an angel, or there are angels who seize your souls.
Yeah.
And if the angel of death comes to you and you were wronging yourself, then these angels will say, where were you?
Yeah.
And then it mentions in one of the interpretations that this relates to people from Mecca who believed in the Prophet, but they didn't immigrate with the Prophet, and then they stayed in Mecca with the disbelievers, and they were fighting with the disbelievers against the believers. So then when these people died, and then the angel of death came to them and they told them, in which group were you? So they said, we were like weak, or we were oppressed by the people in Mecca, meaning if you take this interpretation, it would be like the authority in Mecca. So we were oppressed by them, and then the angels would tell them, why didn't you immigrate? Like the land of God, what it mentions here, the land of God is spacious and it's large. You could have gone anywhere else.
Yeah.
And then here it says these people will have a bad ending.
Yeah, they will be in hell. And I like for me to understand it kind of as holistically as all of us. it's kind of to say we can't blame our situation for our belief, or the earth is large and wide.
Yeah.
Yeah, immigration is difficult, but it's more. It's kind of like choose the easy path or the hard path. The hard path that gets you to a better place.
Yeah, I think it also means that you should not be wronged and oppressed and like not given your rights and just stay there and say, oh, I was oppressed by other people and they
Yeah.
forced me to do whatever, or they made me do wrong things.
Yeah.
Because you always have so many options. So
Yeah, and this does kind of apply back to those situations. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's also difficult to immigrate. I know how difficult it is, but that's kind of the question that you have to ask yourself. Do you want to stay sitting in a place that is gonna end you up in the wrong space, or do you want to do what you best you can to immigrate? And as difficult as it is, it's very admirable to see the parents and families that have immigrated to different cultures and regions. It happens time and time and time and time and time again.
yeah.
So it's possible.
إلا المستضعفين من الرجال والنساء والولدان لا يستطيعون حيلة ولا يهتدون سبيلا.
Okay, here we have an exception specifically for those who cannot, except the oppressed from the men and women and the children who are not able to plan, nor are they directed in a way. So it is possible that you are actually trapped in your circumstances, and it is possible that you are unable to get out,
To move.
and so you are the exception to this rule. You are considered the oppressed. You're not going to hell just because you couldn't get out of the bad situation.
Yeah, and in the next verse it mentions that God. Yeah, we can go to the next verse.
Yeah.
I think.
فأولئك عسى الله أن يعفو عنهم وكان الله عفوا غفورا.
He was saying, so those who are unable to travel or are weak or are children, then it's possible that God will pardon them, and indeed God is oft pardoning and oft forgiving.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're struggling, it's all good. You'll be okay.
ومن يهاجر في سبيل الله يجد في الأرض مراغما كثيرا وسعة ومن يخرج من بيته مهاجرا إلى الله ورسوله ثم يدركه الموت فقد وقع أجره على الله وكان الله غفورا رحيما.
Sad verses, but powerful and somber. And whoever immigrates in the way of God, then he will find in the earth places of refuge that are plentiful and in abundance. And whoever leaves from his house to immigrate towards God and his messenger, and then he is struck by death, or overtakes him death has taken him, then certainly has been made real his reward. It's been fixed on God, and indeed God is oft forgiving and most merciful. So if you do immigrate, if you do go on the way of God and go to try to follow the Prophet and follow the messenger and follow his people, and you die, then you're essentially guaranteed to go to heaven, sort of.
Yeah.
Your reward has been secured with God, and yeah, even if you fail, quote unquote, not fail, even if you die in a way, this is still something that is good for you. So it's better for you to go and try and pass away than it is for you to sit at home and suffer.
إذا ضربتم في الأرض فليس عليكم جناح أن تقصروا من الصلاة إن خفتم أن يفتنكم الذين كفروا إن الكافرين كانوا لكم عدوا مبينا.
Interesting verse, because this was something that we explained with the word darabtum.
Yeah.
So in the previous verses we had that if the wives were not doing what they need to do, then udrubuhum, which here we see an example of what we were talking about.
We see the exact same word meaning if you travel.
If you travel
Yeah.
in the earth, then it's not for you any blame that you shorten from the prayer, and if you fear that those who have disbelieved to harm you, then indeed the disbelievers are for you an enemy that is open.
Yeah, I think the use of the word here is also why we mentioned our introduction, is that the Arabic language is very complex, and when you look at one single word, it can have different meanings. The structure of the sentences can be different and have different meanings. So it's yeah, it's very rich, and the Quran is very rich and has so many possible interpretations.
Yeah.
So this is why we see here the exact same word that was mentioned when you have problems with your wife, and some people interpret it to be like
Strike them.
to strike the woman, while actually here the exact same word means to travel. And this is why what we mentioned in explanation of this, it can mean that you stay away, like you keep a distance from the wife. So yeah, because they use the word that here means is ضربتم في الأرض, if you travel in the earth, if you take a distance in the earth. So it can also mean you should take a distance from your wife. So
yeah. But the verses here, it's saying, so if you're traveling to the land and you shorten your prayer because you're afraid that you may be harmed by those who disbelieve, then God is saying, indeed,
there is no sin upon you, or there is nothing wrong with it. If you travel in the earth and you are scared of people who do not believe, then there is no harm for you, or there is no blame upon you that you make your prayers shorter. So the way that Muslims pray is that they pray in rak'at, like
kneeling and like bowing, prostrating, and then kneeling.
Yeah, so this constitutes, say that this constitutes one rak'ah. So for example, if you do it 4 times, and normally in a prayer, there is no blame on you if when you're traveling you do it in 2. That's what it basically means. Like you can make your prayers shorter.
Rather than doing the full 4, you can do it in 2.
When you travel, and this is something that Muslims do. They usually do that. When they travel, they shorten their prayers. And especially, and in this verse it mentions, especially if you are scared that you will be harmed, or that you will be attacked by people who disbelieve, then you are, of course, allowed to do that.
Yeah, there's no blame on you.
Yeah.
وإذا كنت فيهم فأقمت لهم الصلاة فلتقم طائفة منهم معك وليأخذوا أسلحتهم فإذا سجدوا فليكونوا من ورائكم ولتأت طائفة أخرى لم يصلوا فليصلوا معك وليأخذوا حذرهم وأسلحتهم ود الذين كفروا لو تغفلون عن أسلحتكم وأمتعتكم فيميلون عليكم ميلة واحدة ولا جناح عليكم إن كان بكم أذى من مطر أو كنتم مرضى أن تضعوا أسلحتكم وخذوا حذركم إن الله أعد للكافرين عذابا مهينا.
Okay, more conditions of travel and war, but let's see. And when you are among them, and here where it's understood that it's the prophets, then you lead them for the prayer. Then let it stand a group of them with you, and let them take their arms. So then, if they have prostrated, let them be from behind you. Let the arms that you have be behind you, just in case you get attacked or get ready to be attacked. And let come forward another group that is a group that is different, which has not prayed. Let them pray with you, and let them take their precautions and their arms. Uh, the disbelievers wished for those who you neglect about their arms.
Wish that you are that
Not,
you forget about your arms
Yeah.
and
your
your
baggage,
baggage, so that they attack you.
so that they assault you upon an attack that is a single attack, and there is no blame for you if it was with you any trouble from rain, or from if you were sick, and if you lay down your arms, but take precautions. Indeed, God has prepared for disbelievers a punishment that is humiliating.
Yeah, and I think these verses like give you more context of the time that they were living when these verses were brought down to the prophet. It was a time of war, and they were being attacked. And actually, I think we mentioned it before, but the prophet at the beginning, when he first got the message, for I think 15 years, there were no wars, there were no battles. He was completely peaceful until they started being attacked a lot by the disbelievers. And at that time, God allowed for the believers to defend themselves. So all the fighting was allowed from the beginning, just in defense to those who attack you. And throughout all the verses that we have seen, it's always whenever someone is peaceful towards you, you're not allowed to fight against them in any way. But it shows that the believers were really under attack from the disbelievers. And here it mentions a specific prayer that it's the first time I hear about it in this verse. And it says in one of the interpretations that it's called the prayer of fear. So that if you are afraid for your lives and you want to pray, so if the prophet goes to pray and he's like the imam of the prayer, he takes a group. So the believers should be divided into two groups. One of the groups prays with the prophet, while the other group stands behind them to guard them. Yes, and the ones who are praying should keep their arms with them. And then in the middle of the prayer, so it means that they can divide it in half. Like if they are praying, like they do the 4 rak'at, then the first group can pray. It can do 2 rak'at, and then they go back to guard the other group, while the other group does the 2 rak'at, while also keeping their weapons with them and their baggage with them, because the disbelievers want to attack you all at once. And so you should always be cautious of this. And then at the end of the verse, it mentions that there is no blame for you, or there is no wrong you did if you are sick or if there is rain, that you do not have to carry your weapons. But otherwise, you should always keep your weapons when you're praying.
And take precautions. Essentially, God is saying there is and I find it interesting that it says it's saying God has prepared for the disbelievers a punishment that's humiliating, but this is following the verse that is telling you to be prepared against them. Yeah. So even though there is a punishment, you still have to be kind of vigilant, and you have to protect yourselves against them.
فإذا قضيتم الصلاة فاذكروا الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبكم فإذا اطمأننتم فأقيموا الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.
Okay. And then when you have finished with the prayer, then remember God standing and sitting and lying on your sides. But when you are secure, then establish regular prayer. Indeed, prayer that was for the believers, prayer was prescribed for the believers at fixed times.
لا تهنوا في ابتغاء القوم إن تكونوا تألمون فإنهم يألمون إن تكونوا تألمون فإنهم يألمون كما تألمون وترجون من الله ما لا يرجون وكان الله عليما حكيما
Okay. And do not be weak in the pursuit of the people, and here it's understood the enemy. If you are suffering, then indeed they are suffering. They're also suffering, as like what you are suffering. And whenever you وَتَرْجُونَ مِنَ اللَّهِ,
And you have
and
hope
you have
from
hope,
Allah, but they do not. So
They
it was
don't.
mentioned that it might be referring to the people who came back from the Battle of Uhud when the believers were defeated by the non-believers, and that they were in pain from their they were suffering, or they were in pain from their wounds. And then here God is saying, don't be weakened by this. And know that if you are suffering, they are also suffering from war.
Yeah,
but you are hoping that from God, that you know that you're on the right side. So you're hoping that God will reward you for your suffering and for your pain, but they do not. They do not have these hopes because
they don't believe in God.
They don't believe.
They just believe in themselves. So while you're suffering and they're suffering, you have hope because you believe.
Yeah.
And indeed, God is all-knowing and all-wise.
إنا أنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق لتحكم بين الناس بما أراك الله ولا تكن للخائنين خصيما.
Okay, indeed, we have sent down to you the book in truth, and so that you may judge between the people with what God has shown you, and do not be for the deceitful a pleader.
Yeah, and there is an interesting story that's mentioned in the interpretations about this verse, that it was brought down because a man from people who were Muslims. He was called, just a second, Tama. He was from the tribe of Banu Zafr, and they were Muslims. And this man was known to be a thief. And he stole a dira, like what is
armor?
An armor. And the armor had, was inside a bag that was full of the what you use to make bread.
Oh, wheat, flour.
Yeah, flour. Yes. So there was flour in the bag of the armor. So when he stole it, there were traces on the ground, and then he took it to and placed it in the house of another man called Zayd, and he was a Jew. So the thief was a Muslim, and he placed it in the house of a Jew called Zayd. And then the people followed the traces of the flour on the floor, and then they went to first to the Muslim man, Tama, who actually stole the armor. And then he swore that it wasn't him. He didn't steal it, and he showed them the traces to the house of the Jew. And then they went to the Jew, and he said, "No, I didn't steal it. It's him who stole it, and he put it in my house." And then they all went to the Prophet to
ask for deliberation.
Yes, exactly, to judge in between them. So then this verse came, because the Muslims at that time, so the tribe of the thief, of the man who actually stole the armor, the Muslims were telling the Prophet, if you judge for the Jew against the Muslim, then this will be a shame on the Muslims, and this will weaken the Muslims, because you will show that we are on the weak side. You cannot do that. You should judge for the Muslim against the Jew. But here the verses say that you should judge with
With
the
what
right,
God.
and you should never take the side of the people who do wrong and who deceive. So until the end of the verses we will read today, it talks about this.
Okay.
In this verse it says, it talks to the prophet, and then it tells him, we brought down to you the book to judge between people with the truth that we have shown you, with the wisdom that we have shown you, and do not be to the deceitful people, do not be their
advocates.
their advocates. Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Do not advocate for people who do wrong, whether they are Muslim or not.
Yeah. Which kind of shows the fairness. So, like, it's a beautiful
Yes.
story. We are not anti-Semitic. We don't hate the Jews.
No, we
Just
don't.
so
And
we're-
actually, it shows also that they were living peacefully, like they were all living together.
Yeah.
واستغفر الله إن الله كان غفورا رحيما.
This also just shows the power of mercy and asking forgiveness, but always ask forgiveness for God. Indeed, God is oft forgiving and most merciful.
Yeah. But this is speaking specifically to the prophet, and it asks the prophet how they explain it is that because at that time there were a lot of people who were telling him you should judge on the side of the Muslim man. He didn't do that, but just the thought of it is wrong, that you do not judge between people just because of their religion or their faith, or you should judge with fairness.
So now here's a little bit of a spicy topic. We've mentioned Israel a couple of times in the Quran, and in my opinion, what Hamas is doing does not fall within the lines of these statements. Don't kill a believer if you don't. Like, some of their attacks are not within the ordinance that we're seeing above us. So here it's saying, you should judge based off of what the book has written, and not based off of your people versus their people. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
I still believe that Israel has done a lot of things that they're to be held accountable for, but I also see the harm that Hamas is doing, for example.
We are not allowed, as Muslims, we are not allowed to kill people who do not fight us.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah. So I do not believe that anyone killing a peaceful person sitting in their home can be right in any way, shape, or form. But this is being done by Israel 100 times more than it was done by Hamas.
Sure.
And if we go into like the details of October the 7th, the plan at the beginning, from what I heard, is that they were going there. It was a military operation to go into like specific military sites from the Israeli army. But then what happened is that when they went inside, they found this festival. They didn't even know about this festival. We're gonna go into
a forever discussion, but
Yes, let's continue the verses.
But here again, be justful, be honest, be what's based on the book, not based off of our people versus theirs.
Yeah.
ولا تجادل عن الذين يختانون أنفسهم إن الله لا يحب من كان خوانا أثيما.
Powerful imagery and words. Do not argue for those who deceive themselves. Indeed, God does not love those who are treacherous and sinful.
Yeah.
Powerful, colorful imagery.
Yeah.
I love the expression of the ones who deceive themselves.
Me too. That's exactly what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Because you find that a lot of people who do wrong things, they're deceiving. First of all, they're deceiving themselves.
Yeah.
They might be deceiving the people around them,
Yeah.
but the first person they deceive is themselves.
Yeah.
And here it's talking to the prophet again. Do not advocate for those who deceive themselves. And it's understood like the people who do sins. Here, if we are related to the story that was mentioned, is for those who, like, for example, steal. Do not advocate for someone who steals, because he is deceiving himself first.
Because usually the one who's deceiving himself tells him, I need it, it's fair for me.
Yeah.
They create all these conditions of why they're doing it, and they really believe that they're not doing wrong.
And I think you can apply to
any
anyone who does something wrong.
It can be definitely applied to both of us when we commit our mistakes.
Yes. You always have an excuse, right?
Yeah, you always think, but
Yeah.
يستخفون من الناس ولا يستخفون من الله وهو معهم إذ يبيتون ما لا يرضى من القول وكان الله بما يعملون محيطا.
They seek to hide from people, but they cannot hide from God. For he is with them when they plot at night, or when they plot
What God
what
would
he does
not
not approve of the word. And indeed, God is what they do, all encompassing. He's aware of every single thing they do.
Yeah, for me, I understood it in two different ways. So it might be that you care more about hiding it from people, and you don't care about hiding it from God, or you are hiding from people, but you cannot hide from God.
Okay.
Do you know?
I kind
of
of see, because here it's saying they seek to hide, where it's an active seeking to hide from people and not seeking to hide from God.
Yeah.
But here is they've translated to can hide. I kind of understand your perspective. But
There's
that's
a very slight difference.
Yeah, but that's kind of the power of the Arabic language as well, is kind of
Yeah.
seeing how wide the interpretations can be. But either way, they're hiding from people, but they can't, or they're not trying to hide from God. And he is with them. He's aware of everything that they do.
Yes.
أأنتم هؤلاء جادلتم عنهم في الحياة الدنيا فمن يجادل الله عنهم يوم القيامة أم من يكون عليهم وكيلا.
Okay, and here you are, those who argue for them in the life that is the life of the world, but whoever argues with God for them, who will argue for God for them on the day of resurrection, or who will be for them a defender?
Yeah, and related to the story that I mentioned, so here it can be talking about the people who were defending the thief.
Yeah.
Because they are believers and
Yeah.
they were advocating for him because he is a believer, then he shouldn't be judged against.
Yeah.
So here it says, and here you are arguing for those people who deceive themselves, who do sins and so on in this world.
Yeah.
But who will
argue for them
on the day of resurrection?
Yeah.
They will not find, in a way, they will not find someone to argue for them on the day of resurrection, and they will not find someone in their defense. And it can apply to many, many different situations of very powerful people, for example, who do wrong things, and they find a lot of people willing to argue for them and to take their side and everything.
Yeah.
But here it says, like, on the day of resurrection, they will not find anyone to argue for them or to help them.
Yeah. I do find that it can apply to don't defend people who are guilty just because they're your people.
Yeah. Or just because they're powerful.
Specifically the powerful. Safa wants to make sure.
ومن يعمل سوءا أو يظلم نفسه ثم يستغفر الله يجد الله غفورا رحيما.
And again, here it's saying whoever does evil or something bad, negative, or wrongs themselves, their souls, themselves makes more sense, then seeks forgiveness, and God will find God is oft forgiving and oft merciful. So there's always mercy, even if you've made a mistake. So rather fess up instead of trying to deceive and pretend that you didn't. 111, nice number.
ومن يكسب إثما فإنما يكسبه على نفسه وكان الله عليما حكيما.
And whoever earns sin, then only he earns it over himself, not his soul, himself. and indeed God is all knowing and all wise. Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
ومن يكسب خطيئة أو إثما ثم يرم به بريئا فقد احتمل بهتانا وإثما مبينا.
Yeah, continuing the blame game. Whoever earns a fault or commits an evil, makes a mistake here. I think mistake sounds quite good. Or a sin, then throws with it an innocent, puts the blame on an innocent. So then surely he has burdened himself with slander and a sin that is manifest, that is very obvious, a blatant
Yes.
sin.
Yes.
So don't blame somebody else for your misdeeds. This is the last verse, right?
Yes.
ولولا فضل الله عليك ورحمته لهم طائفة منهم أن يضلوك وما يضلون إلا أنفسهم وما يضرونك من شيء وأنزل الله عليك الكتاب والحكمة وعلمك ما لم تكن تعلم وكان فضل الله عليك عظيما.
Okay. And if it was not for the grace of God upon you and His mercy, then surely it would have reserved a group of them to misguided you. They
Yeah,
would have
and
succeeded in.
yeah, and this is to the prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was not for God's grace, bounty upon you, then a group of them would have misled you, but they do not mislead except themselves, and they do not harm you in anything. And God has sent down to you the book and the wisdom, and taught you what you did not know, and is of the grace of God upon you that is great, and has placed God's great grace upon you, bounty. So yeah, talking about the conclusion of the story, saying that he would have been deceived if it wasn't for the grace of God, and they do not deceive, and God has protected you, which I think is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us for another episode. This is the end. As usual, we always end with Sadaq Allahu al-Aliyyul Azim, which means trusted is the word of God that is high and most great. And yeah, that's it. Salam alaikum. I love you all. Take care. Bye-bye.